On today's video, I'm going to be turning the cheapest electric guitar I could find on Marketplace into an inexpensive instrument that plays great. I paid $60 for this bad boy. You could probably find cheaper guitars out there, but this is what was available in my area when I was looking. I haven't tried this thing out yet, so I don't know how or if it works. I'm going to try to keep this as simple as possible, including using basic tools where possible. By the end of this video, we're going to have an inexpensive guitar that plays great. So let's get into it. The first thing I'm going to do is just check to make sure the electronics work. So I'm going to plug this into my amplifier. And the next thing I'm going to do is just take a screwdriver, and all I'm going to do is just tap on the pickup magnets. If I hear something coming through the amp, I'll know that that pickup works. So right now I have the selector switch on the bridge position, so let's just tap those. So clearly that is working. Let's move on to the middle position. That one works too. Now we'll move it up to the neck position. So all three of our pickups work. The next thing I'm going to do is see if our volume works. So right now it's all the way up, and clearly the volume is all the way up. So I turned it all the way down. The volume works. So the next thing is our tone. Now we have two tones. If this thing is wired like a typical Stratocaster, one tone will control the neck pickup, the other tone will control the middle pickup, and then the bridge pickup is full on all the way, all the time. So let's just try first with this neck pickup. So obviously that is the tone for the neck pickup, and it worked just fine. So let's see what controls our middle pickup. So that's with the tone all the way up. Let's try this same knob again. So that made no difference. So let's try this other tone knob. Okay, so the second tone knob controls the middle pickup. Now let's see if anything controls our bridge pickup. So the volume and tone is wired like a typical Stratocaster. So one last thing we're going to test with the electronics is to make sure that we can set our selector switch in positions 2 and 4, and that it'll be a combination of two pickups. So in position 2, we should have the bridge and the middle pickup. So actually, that's interesting. In this second position, we don't have anything coming through the amp. Now let's try the fourth position. So we should have these two pickups. Only the neck pickup works. So something is wrong with our selector switch. We'll make a note of that. In all honesty, it might just be dirty. So we'll try cleaning it first before we get any deeper into like replacing it or something. So the next thing we gotta do is check our frets. So this is gonna be the most basic way that you can check your frets without any special tools or straight edges. All I'm gonna do is take this guitar into the playing position, and I'm just gonna test every single fret on every string. What I'm gonna be listening for is a buzz coming through the amplifier or fretting out. What fretting out is say I fret this fret, instead of it playing this note, what it will actually do is hit one of the upper frets and play that note. That was kind of good. We didn't hear any of our strings fretting out or buzzing. That being said, the action, which is how high the strings are off the fretboard, is quite high on this guitar. So that's going to be something we'll adjust later on. So unless you're a slide player and your strings are this far off the fretboard, that is not a good thing. It makes the guitar a lot harder to play, and you know, it can actually kind of go out of tune a bit when you fret it, depending on how high it is. Another thing I noticed is one of my strings popped out of the nut. The nut, if you don't know, is this black thing that separates all the strings. And that is because we are missing a string retainer. You can see one of the string retainers there. That one is missing. So We're gonna have to add that to our list. Right now, we know that our switch is having some issues. We know that our action is way too high, and we know that we're missing a string retainer. So let's keep going with this. So obviously somebody has gone a bit wild with the stickers on this thing. To be honest, it doesn't look bad to me, and it was something that I would have done as a wee lad. That being said, I'm an adult now. I have refined tastes, so I'll be removing these things. So the first thing I'm going to do is just get rid of all these strings. When you go to cut the strings off a guitar, you just got to be careful they don't pop off and poke you in the eye. They are under tension. You can loosen the tuners if you want. I'm not going to. It's always a good idea to kind of wrap these things up together so they don't go everywhere, because one of the most painful things a guitar player can experience is stepping on the ends of a string and having it go into your foot. So this is a large end. I'm going to throw this directly in the garbage. Now we have to get these ends out. On this style of guitar, they just push right through. So these are the ends you really got to worry about poking you the most. When they're really short, it's a lot more dangerous. Okay, so let's just get into peeling these stickers off of here. Okay, so we got all the stickers off of there. The only problem is this thing is very sticky. There's tons of adhesive stuck to it. And actually on the back there's some backing to some of the stickers stuck on. So we're gonna have to take this to the next level and clean off all this goo. So we're at kind of a crossroads here. I can take this apart, which will make it cleaning it a lot easier, or I can leave it together, which will make it a lot simpler. I think what I'm going to do is just quickly pull this apart. You'll see how it happens. It's not even that difficult. So the first thing I'm going to do is just take the neck off. So you're going to want to use a Phillips head screwdriver. I honestly haven't run into a guitar that wasn't a Phillips head. Okay, it's that easy. It's always a good idea to keep your parts somewhere where you won't lose them. I'm just going to actually take the strap buttons off first. Now I'm going to take this back cover off. So a lot of these screws I'm seeing, the strap buttons, these ones, are actually rusted. So that tells me that this guitar got wet at some point, and pretty wet too. Okay, we'll put this aside. I'm going to take this pickguard off of here. If you do not have the ability to solder, do not cut the two wires that I'm about to cut. Just leave them connected. It'll be a little bit more annoying, but you can still work around that. So just cut 1, 2. There we go. Now we'll take our output jack out of here. Put that aside. Now we'll take our bridge off of here too. Actually, before I do this, we gotta loosen the tension on our springs. Now we can take this off. So there we go. We have our guitar taken apart and ready to clean. There's a few things you can use to clean a guitar. And by clean, I mean get rid of the sticker goo off of it. What I'm going to be using is actually just some WD-40. This guitar is finished with polyurethane finish, which is like the most durable finish you will find on a guitar. If your guitar has an oil finish or, a lacquer finish or, French polish, anything basically other than polyurethane, you're probably not going to want to use WD-40. With that being said, most inexpensive guitars that you'll find have a polyurethane finish. It is the cheapest finish to do. So I'm just going to put on some gloves just because I don't like the WD-40 soaking into my skin. So I think I'm just going to work on the body for right now. So one thing I got to be careful with this WD-40 is I don't want it soaking into these holes And I also don't want it soaking into the end grain. You can see this guitar is made out of plywood. I don't want the WD-40 soaking into the plywood. So what I gotta do is I'm actually just gonna spray it onto like a shop towel. You could use a paper towel or just a rag. And I'm gonna use that to apply it to the finish. So I'm just gonna use a razor blade to kind of try and scrape some of this backing off of here. You gotta be really careful not to scratch the finish. Okay, that was a ridiculous amount of work. Well, we got all the goo off there. I'm just gonna give it a quick wipe, and then we'll move on to the pick guard. Okay, so we got the goo off the pick guard. Now we'll just wipe that down. To be honest, there's a bunch of goo on this back plate, but I never use these back plates, so I'm just gonna leave this on here because I'm not putting it back on the guitar. Okay, so that was a lot of work, but honestly, it looks so much better, at least in my opinion. Anyways, you would have seen me rubbing on this body here with a razor blade. I just want to reiterate, if you're going to do that, you got to be really careful because it's really easy to scratch the finish. Definitely you'll want to use a brand new razor blade, not one that's got gouges in it, and even with it, you'll probably put some scratches in. I have plans for this finish on this guitar, so I'm not too worried about scratching it, but if you're worried about scratching it, you may want to just use the method I used on the pickguard, which is a lot of elbow grease rubbing with the paper towel. So the next thing I'm going to do is just put this thing back together. But while I've got it apart, I'm going to take a look at this switch that we have a problem with. What I got here is called Deoxit. It's just a contact cleaner. So all I'm going to do is just spray it into the contacts on this switch and move the switch back and forth. Okay, that should work. The next thing I got to do is reattach the wires I cut. So on the back side of here, we have two wires that I cut. We have the gray wire, which is actually two wires, and we have the black wire, which is one wire. So the first thing we got to do is strip these down. Okay, so those are stripped. Now I'm actually going to push these wires through the body before I strip them. Okay, so I'm just gonna twist these wires back together.
Solder the wires, then wrap the solder joints in electrical tape.
Okay, so now we can start putting our screws back in. Okay, so now we got our pickguard and our output jack put back on. Now we're gonna put on our bridge. So the first thing we're going to do is reconnect our spring claw. We'll just push this wire back in here. Okay, so now our spring claw is attached. We can install our bridge. So with this style of bridge, what we want to do is tighten these screws in just until they touch the surface of the bridge plate. You don't want to put them in any further than that. Now we can attach our springs. Okay, so now our bridge is installed. Next thing I gotta do is reinstall our strap buttons. And now we're gonna reinstall our neck. Alright, now I'm gonna clean and condition the fretboard on this thing. To me, this is a very important step. I always clean the fretboard on any used guitar I buy, because you never know. A guy could be 1 minute and trying to learn Enter Sandman the next. I'm going to be using this F1 oil I bought. So we'll shake it up. Okay. Put some on a rag. It smells good. All right, now I'll just get it on here. Maybe put a bit more. I'm just trying to make sure I get it into all the little nooks and crannies here. Okay, I'm just going to let this soak in for a bit. Okay, so this F1 oil has been sitting on here for a little bit, but after closer inspection, I can see there's a lot of like gross goo right around the frets. Honestly, I think it's probably a bit much for this stuff to get rid of. So what I'm going to do is I've got a plastic razor blade here. Now you can get these at the auto parts store. And I'm just going to go along and just scrape along the frets and just kind of loosen up anything that's a little bit outside of the scope of what this F1 oil can do. So hopefully that razor blade loosened up some of this extra stuff we got on here. I'm just going to put a little bit more of this because I feel like in the areas where I had the crust up against the frets that this didn't fully penetrate through. This fretboard is really disgusting, and I probably should have cleaned it a bit better at first. Maybe if you're like maintain your guitar, it cleans the fretboard, but I don't think it's meant to remove 30 years of disgusting goo. So I use the F1 oil on this fretboard, and honestly, made it look so much better. I'm actually just getting ready to put the strings on this thing, but there's a couple things I gotta mention. So if you didn't notice, when I put this guitar on the workbench, it was actually strung left-handed. This is a right-handed guitar, but it was strung left-handed. And whoever did that attempted to make the nut, able to be used for a left-handed guitar. Well, they kind of did a number on it. So I have my doubts that this nut is actually going to work in its current state. It may need some tweaking, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. The other thing is these frets have some divots in them. So, I mean, ideally, we would dress these frets, but I have alternative plans for this guitar. So I'll actually be dressing these frets at a later episode. The last thing I have to mention is the bridge saddles. Often when you buy a guitar, the intonation will be already set. Most people don't mess with the intonation, but because this guitar, again, was strung left-handed, it appears somebody has messed with the intonation. So I'm going to have to adjust the intonation on this. All right, so I'm just going to throw on a set of guitar strings. Okay, so on any type of guitar like this, Stratocaster style, what you got to do is put the string in the back, pull it all the way through, and then what I like to do is I put it in its position in the nut, and then come 2 strings past where my tuner is. So this is my tuner. So I'll go 1, 2, and then make a note. Pull the string through to the point I noted, right? Kink it, and then just start winding it up. Now they make guitar string winders for this, but I don't know where mine is, so I'm just gonna speed this video up. Okay, so I got all these strings on here, but what I want to show you is that these strings, they wind down the tuner. So this is the first wrap around the tuner, this is the second wrap, this is the third wrap, and they're going progressively down. And what that does is it increases the angle that the string comes back from the nut. And this downward pressure is what holds the string in the nut. So it's kind of important that you make sure that all your strings wind down on the tuners. So now the next thing I'm going to do is just cut these ends off of here. So the next thing we got to do is set the intonation on this thing. That is important because if your intonation is out, your guitar will progressively sound more out of tune as you play up the fretboard. Essentially what you're doing when you're setting the intonation is making sure that the 12th fret is actually in the dead center of the string. You do this by adjusting these saddles down here. I've got my tuner pedal here, so what I'm going to do is I am going to plug it in. So on this style of guitar, you need a Phillips head screwdriver to turn the screws on these saddles. Let's start off by getting our guitar tuned. That's close enough. So now we got our guitar in tune. let's do our intonation. Ideally, you would do this in the playing position, but I think it's just a little bit easier to film this way, which is why I'm doing it like this. So I'm going to start with the low E string and work my way towards the high E string. Okay, so we're in tune. So it seems a bit sharp when we fret it. If it's sharp when we fret it, that means that the string is too short. So we're going to have to lengthen it a bit by tightening the screw on this saddle. Now that's going to make it go out of tune, so we're going to have to tune it again. Okay. Still a bit sharp, less than before. So we'll tighten this up a bit more, retune the string, then we'll play the 12th fret. We're getting there, still sharp. So I'm going to tighten it up a bit more. Tighten up the screw, that is, lengthen the string. Retune. Okay, now I'm going to play my fretted note at the 12th fret. Almost there. Just a little bit sharp. So I need to lengthen the string a little bit more. So I'm going to tighten this screw up again. Retune the string. Okay, now I'm going to play the fretted note at the 12th fret. Boom. We're intonated. So now I'm just going to repeat the process for the other 5 strings. So our guitar is now intonated. The next thing we need to think about is our action. When you're adjusting your action on your guitar, there's a few things to consider. The first is there is action that is dictated by the nut. Potentially, if somebody has filed the nut too deep, that will cause you problems. Or if your guitar was not set up properly from the factory, that can also cause you problems. But in my experience, usually the nut is not the problem. Usually what is the problem is the bridge saddles. Because people get in here and they start adjusting them and making them all wild and crazy. But if that doesn't solve the problem, on a guitar like this that has a bolt-on neck, the neck angle may be incorrect, and that can be fixed by you take the neck off and put shims underneath the base of the neck, and that will change the neck angle. Also, potentially, you may have problems with your truss rod. So the truss rod controls if the neck is straight, bowed, or back bowed. The way I like to do things is I always like to start off with the easiest thing first, which is adjusting the saddles. On this guitar, how you adjust the saddles, you can see in these disgusting corroded screws, there's a little hexagonal hole. So into that hole goes an Allen key. You put the Allen key into the hole, and you can turn it either way, and that will either raise or lower the saddle. I'm going to start with the low E string, and I'm going to lower it as low as I can go until it starts fretting out or buzzing, and then I'm going to just raise it just a little bit. So let's start off by lowering this a little bit. Just get it back into tune. Okay, it is buzzing a little bit, but I feel like that might be a truss rod adjustment issue, so I'm just going to leave it and go on to the next string. Okay, so one other thing I'm going to do while I'm sitting here is just adjust my pickup heights to make sure that I have like an even kind of volume through all my pickups. My bridge pickup's kind of lower than these two. To adjust your pickup height, you just use a Phillips head screwdriver. You can get all technical about this if you want, but it's really not that complicated. You don't want the pickups so high that they're hitting the string, or if they're too close to the string, it can cause some issues, like sounds like crap. But basically, you want them as high as you can get them without them being too high. You can literally just mess around with them raising them and lowering them, and figure out what sounds the best. Okay, so let's see how that sounds. So my bridge pickup right now, my middle pickup, and my neck pickup. While we're here, let's make sure that our middle positions work, so our second and fourth position. So remember when the second position didn't work and I cleaned it with the deoxit? So now when I tap on the bridge pickup and the middle pickup in the second position, both work. So that means that solved the problem. The switch was just dirty. So let's try the fourth position now. So that will be our neck pickup and our middle pickup fixed. So all we had to do was just clean that switch with the deoxit and it works. Okay, so actually I think I'm going to adjust the truss rod a bit because it's a little bit buzzy in the middle section of the fretboard. So what I'm going to do is loosen the truss rod just a little bit. So on this guitar, you use an Allen key and it goes in the end of the headstock here. So all I'm going to do is turn this like an eighth or a quarter of a turn, very small amount. Okay, so now it's looser. So let's see if that made a difference. We'll just tune it back up first. Still a little bit buzzy. The problem with a used guitar is you never know how much it's being adjusted. I have a feeling somebody really cranked this up. So the reason why I'm doing it like this with the Allen key in this direction versus in this direction is just because I'm not able to really turn it very much. When it's in this way, it just hits against the strings, where it's this way, it's a little bit easier. Alright, so that's coming through a lot clearer now, way less buzzing. So that was a good call to loosen the truss rod. So now we can probably actually lower our action even more. So I adjusted my truss rod. I lowered my action as low as I can go without getting any buzz or fretting out coming through the amp. Now what I'm going to do is just bend each string and add every fret just to make sure I don't fret out when I bend. And if that's the case, then I'm done setting my action. Okay, so this is where we're at now. This is what the bridge looks like after we've adjusted it. We're able to lower it quite a bit, and the intonation is set properly. So this headstock says San, but if we zoom in and slightly change the angle, we can make out that this is Samick. So this is a Samick guitar. It's actually, the model is called a DS410, and it was made in the mid-90s. So on the bright side, we're missing our string tree, but because I wound my strings down the tuning peg, that's okay. The strings are not popping out of the nut, and the fact that the nut is all messed up, well, still works. So that's pretty awesome. When I put these strings on here, I didn't do this, but it's always a good idea when you put on a new set of strings to stretch them out. They'll just stay in tune a little bit better if you do. So I'm going to do that right now. All right. That's everything. Let's check it out and see how it plays. We have successfully turned trash into treasure. This guitar would be great for a beginner or someone looking for a low budget but decent guitar. Unfortunately, I don't fall into either of those categories, and I have far more nefarious intentions with this instrument. So if you want to see the diabolical plans I have for this thing, make sure to subscribe. I'll be going back to my custom bass build for the next few videos, but after that's done, I'm going to be going to town on this. And if you're still watching, do me a favor. Leave a like or comment. It really helps out with the channel, and I appreciate it. So until next week, talk to you later.